It is not weakness that makes you reach for your phone the second a room goes quiet. It is not a character flaw that you turn on a podcast just to fall asleep, or that a silent car ride feels heavier than a silent room ever should. Your brain was not built for true silence. It was built for a world that was never actually silent, and somewhere in your nervous system, that difference is still being tracked. So why does quiet feel like a threat? Why does your chest tighten in an empty apartment at 11 p.m. when nothing at all is happening? The answer starts with a study that embarrassed an entire university psychology department. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson and his team at the University of Virginia ran an experiment that sounds almost too strange to be real. They took hundreds of participants, sat them alone in a bare room with absolutely nothing to do for just 6 to 15 minutes, and gave them one option: if the boredom became unbearable, press a button and give themselves a mild electric shock, sit in silence, or feel pain. Nearly a quarter of the women and 2/3 of the men chose the shock. Some people shocked themselves more than once. People who, days earlier, had said they would pay money to avoid being shocked at all, chose it anyway, just to escape sitting alone with their own thoughts in a quiet room. Now, you might be thinking, that's not ancient biology. That's just modern boredom, or maybe modern anxiety. Fair pushback. But if this were only about entertainment-starved modern brains, you would expect people to get used to it fast, to adapt within a session or two. They didn't, and the effects showed up in 18-year-olds and 77-year-olds alike, in people with phones taken away and people who had never used a smartphone in their life. Something older than the smartphone is doing this to you. To find it, you have to look at a place engineered to be the quietest spot on Earth. Orfield Labs in Minneapolis houses an anechoic chamber, a room built from thick concrete, steel, and wedges of sound-absorbing foam that swallow 99.999 of any sound wave that touches them. Background noise in a normal quiet bedroom sits around 30 decibels. Inside this chamber, it drops to -9 decibels, quieter than the threshold of human hearing itself. People who volunteer to sit inside are handed a chair and told they can leave anytime. The facility's own founder, acoustic engineer Stephen Orfield, has stated that no visitor has ever managed to sit in that chamber in the dark for longer than 45 minutes. Most give up in under half that time. In total silence, with nothing external to listen to, your own heartbeat and blood flow become audible, and people report disorientation, and hallucinations start to creep in for some. Silence that deep isn't relaxing. It's disorienting to a brain that evolved expecting sound. Here's the part that connects the electric shocks to the padded room. Your nervous system was shaped in an environment that was never, ever this quiet. For roughly 300,000 years, humans lived in small, tight-knit groups, sleeping in shared shelters, sitting around fires that crackled through the night, surrounded by the breathing of other people, insects calling, wind moving through grass, animals shifting in the dark. There was always a low hum of ambient life around you. And that hum was not just background noise, it was information. It told your brain, constantly, without you ever consciously checking, that the world was proceeding normally. Insects were calling. Nothing large and dangerous was moving toward camp. People were breathing steadily nearby. You were not alone. Picture it for a second. It's late. The meat from the day's hunt has already been eaten, and the group is settled around a low fire that burned down to embers. Nobody is on watch in the tense, alert way you might imagine. They don't need to be, because the forest itself is doing the watching for them. Crickets keep their steady rhythm. An owl calls somewhere off to the left, then again, closer. A child shifts in their sleep against a parent's side, and someone across the fire lets out a long, unhurried breath. None of this registers as noteworthy to anyone lying there half asleep, because none of it is a break in the pattern. That's the entire point. The ambient hum was so reliable, so constant, that your ancestors' brains could actually relax into it, using it as proof that the night was unfolding exactly as expected. Silence. Real silence. Never featured in that scene at all. It would have meant the crickets had stopped, the owl had gone quiet, and every sleeping adult would have startled awake at once because their bodies would have registered instantly that something in that soundscape had changed. Field biologists have documented this same pattern for decades in the animal kingdom, and it's called the hush. Walk through a forest and the background chorus of birds and insects hums along steadily, and it means nothing is wrong. But the moment a predator moves through that same forest, the chorus doesn't get louder. It stops. Dead silence spreads outward from the predator like a ripple, because every animal that can sense the threat goes quiet at once. Silence, in the world your body was built for, was never neutral. Silence was often the sound predators made just before something happened. Multiple, completely independent lines of evidence, controlled psychology labs, acoustic engineering chambers, and field studies of animal alarm behavior all point toward the same underlying wiring to a survival-tuned brain. An unbroken absence of sound isn't peaceful, it is suspicious. That old circuitry still runs the show today, even though nothing outside is actually hunting you. Here's the chain, step by step. Your brain has an orienting system, first mapped by physiologist Ivan Sokolov in the 1960s, that constantly scans ambient sound for anything unexpected, and total silence itself now counts as unexpected because it almost never occurred in the environment that shaped you. When that system flags an anomaly, it triggers your stress response, the same hormonal cascade your ancestors needed to react fast to a threat. That cascade produces restlessness, a tight chest, racing thoughts, a low hum of unease with no obvious source. And because your brain desperately wants that ambient hum of everything is fine restored, you reach automatically for anything that fills the silence back in. A podcast, a show playing in the background while you do something else. The reflexive scroll through your phone the second a room goes quiet. You are not distracting yourself out of weakness. You are manually recreating the campfire hum your nervous system still expects to hear. This is why silence hits differently depending on what surrounds it. A quiet forest with birdsong doesn't spike your heart rate, because that is the ambient hum your body is calibrated for. But a dead silent apartment at midnight, especially if you live alone, triggers something closer to the anechoic chamber effect. Your body starts producing its own signal to replace the one that's missing. And without something external to listen to, that signal turns into anxious internal noise. Modern life quietly stripped away nearly every source of ambient human presence that used to come standard. The fire, the shared room, the sound of other people breathing nearby, replaced it with soundproofed walls, apartments where you can go a full evening without hearing another human voice. You didn't get more silence because you got calmer. You got more silence because you got more isolated, and your ancestors' brain is still trying to warn you about it. And this explains a habit almost everyone has, and almost nobody questions the show you put on in the background while you cook, or scroll, or fall asleep, that you're not even really watching. It's not really entertainment. It's manufactured ambient hum, a synthetic campfire, piped in through a speaker because the real one hasn't existed for thousands of years. The white noise machine on your nightstand, the fan you run even in winter, the podcast voices murmuring while you fold laundry, all of it is doing the exact same job those crickets and that crackling fire used to do for free, telling a very old part of your brain that the world outside is proceeding normally, and that you are not, in fact, the only living thing left awake. So, the next time you can't sleep without background noise, or you feel that specific, nameless unease the moment a room goes quiet, don't read it as anxiety you need to fix or willpower you're lacking. Read it as a 300,000-year-old alarm system doing exactly the job it was built for, still faithfully checking a world that no longer matches the one it was trained on. You were never meant to sit in true, total silence. You were meant to be surrounded gently by the low, constant hum of other living things nearby, telling your nervous system over and over, without a single word, you're not alone, and nothing is coming. The silence was never actually empty to your ancestors. It was full of a fire crackling and people breathing, close enough to hear. Maybe the quiet in your apartment doesn't need a podcast to fix it. Maybe it just needs what it was always missing: someone else's breathing, close enough to hear.